Classify certain areas as, hey, this is a good place, it's got good material. However, what they'll say is you can mine anywhere, and primarily it's in the agricultural, more rural areas, because once you have development, you have all the paving and all the infrastructure that'd be extremely costly to remove that and then mine. So most of the lead agencies, like counties and sometimes cities, you actually have to get their permission. So when you get your permission, that's called a discretionary approval. And then they can say yes or no, or they can say, you can do it, but you have to do, you have to put in a dust plan, you have to do monitoring water wells so you don't have any impacts. So even on private property, you essentially have to apply for it. There are other things, like for example, there's a lot of federal land down in the southern part of California and also northeastern California, where you'd have to get permission from the Bureau of Land Management or the National Forest Service. They typically, maybe under Trump it might be different because he's more development friendly, but for the most part, even under Bush, both Bushes, there wasn't a lot of mineral development on private land. So you might see some of that changing, but for the most part, you don't see a lot of that on federal property. So it's mostly private land. So what I do then, and I have one other partner, one of my other partners, I have two partners, one is a geographer and one is another attorney. I actually wooed him out of McGeorge. He was going to McGeorge. I went to a job fair and I took some of those EIRs and plopped them on the table. And he said, I've been working for the resource agency, but I'm just not sure if I want to practice law. So I said, you know what? I did it. It's not that, it's overrated. You're basically stuck with a suit and you're stuck in a room. And for your first 4 years, you're sitting in a desk. Matt probably can attest to this. You sit in a desk and they say, okay, you're our stream bed alteration agreement guy. You sit there, and whenever we have one, we'll come to you, and you sit on your desk and you basically do all the grunt work. I said, with a consulting firm, you'll still be able to, we'll still go to seminars, we'll still keep up with our California Bar Association continuing education. However, we'll be able to meet with clients, we'll be able to apply all those laws to different fact situations. A couple of things that I don't do, because even though I'm a member of the bar, I don't have insurance, and I really don't want to compete with practicing attorneys. So for example, I had a meeting today on a project in Livermore where the attorney he used to be my boss when I worked at the big fancy Downey Brand place. But he's still practicing law, and you know what? I still work with him on a lot of projects, but I specifically say, I'm not practicing law. If there's any legal issues, I'll either try to get my client to hire you, or I'll work with county counsel, and we'll let them handle it. But what they do a lot, because of my legal background, they'll let me take the first crack at drafting certain legal documents, like resolutions that have to be adopted by different decision makers, or findings. So when you actually have an environmental impact report where there's an adverse impact to the environment, and you still are going to prove it, they allow you, the actual statute allows you to approve it, even with environmental issues. However, you have to explain what are the overriding benefits, or what are the overriding benefits of this project. Job creation, some environmental benefits. One of the advantages of having a mine is that you're having, the material can only transfer economically about 20 to 30 miles by a truck. So if you have a mine close to a market, you're going to be saving all that greenhouse gas that you'd have. So there's going to be some environmental benefits too. In addition, if you already have a disturbed area, isn't it better to disturb there rather than impact agricultural, like prime agricultural land? So there's often a lot of offsets. So a lot of my day-to-day work, I'll still be doing quasi-legal aspects and stuff that, as an attorney, I'm glad that I learned, because I can apply this in a non-legal, less traditional background. Some of the other key aspects that legal training can help you in a field like mine is writing. We're writing these complex, demanding documents that have to meet certain regulatory thresholds in terms of science, but they also have to be accessible and understandable to the layperson. So our job is to try to simplify, like we'll get this really geeky hydrologist that I work with a lot, great guy, but he doesn't speak English, he speaks hydrologist, right? So I need to take that hydrologist report that has all the things that are required by the regulation and try to explain it to a layperson. So what we mean by groundwater recharge is that if the mine is using X amount of water, that water may bring down the water table, temporarily as you're using it, but then it'll eventually fluctuate back. So I need to explain some of these technical terms in these environmental documents. So another skill that I found useful from the legal realm is public speaking and thinking on your feet. I am a little bit thick. It's not because I eat, it's because I have a thick skin, because when I'm working on mining projects, I'm getting yelled at. And typically I'm representing the lead agency. We don't really care whether or not the project is approved or not. However, we need to explain the pros and cons, and we need to explain to the decision makers, okay, if you approve this, you're going to have traffic. You're going to have air quality. It's going to be noisy. Okay. However, you're going to have material that's closer to your thing. It's going to reduce the cost of the material. You're going to create high-paying jobs. Mining is one industry that actually is famous for having extremely high-paying jobs. I think their median is like $60,000 to $70,000 for equipment operation. So you don't even necessarily have to have a high education. You have to have a special training in that. So I'll be explaining these, and I'll have these public meetings. People, oh, you're in bed with the mining companies. Oh, you're going to kill our neighbors. You don't live here. You live in stupid Carmichael. You don't live in Livermore or Imperial County. But, so you have to be able to think on your feet and try to stay cool. And that's what, as an attorney, that's what you need to learn to do if you're litigating or if you're in negotiations. That's another aspect is negotiation skills and how you learn to negotiate as an attorney. Understanding that, you know what, maybe the mining company wants to have a 400-acre site. But when we look at the environmental impacts, really 350 acres makes more sense. That if you avoid this one little area that has a whole bunch of wetlands, you're still going to get 95% of the reserves. You might lose some, but you're going to have the offsetting environmental benefits that you'll derive by avoiding certain impacts. So those are some of the transferable skills in terms of getting that legal education and then applying it to a non-traditional field. Some of the other benefits is just the ability to interact with not just attorneys, but also hydrologists. We have an economist on our staff. We have a mining engineer on our staff. We have a technical editor that, even though I think I'm a good writer, she beats the heck out of it, and I love it because it makes the work product better. So I think that's having a more diverse set of clients, a diverse set of people you're working with. No rigorous. I think I wear a suit maybe once or twice a year when I go to a Board of Supervisors hearing. I have sort of a rule for Planning Commission, coat and tie, Board of Supervisors, I'll suit up. But for the most part, this is actually sort of dressed up for me. We actually have a rule in our office that in the summer, that if it's 90 degrees, shorts are optional. If it's 100 degrees, they're mandatory. Because our philosophy is, and I wish law firms would have this philosophy more, is you work hard enough, the work itself and the thinking and the problem solving is hard enough. Why do you have to be uncomfortable physically to do it, right? So for the most part, we're pretty casual. We don't get a lot of foot traffic. We actually have a statewide practice. Last month I was down in Imperial County in front of the Board of Supervisors. Yesterday, or last Thursday, I was in Livermore, so we're all over the place. So that's another neat thing about not necessarily practicing law, because if you're a litigator, you're basically going to different courthouses. I get to go out to different mine sites, to different areas, looking at different regions all over the state. So the diversity and the experience is actually pretty rewarding. So that, let me go back and look at my notes to see if I missed anything. I think that gives you a good sort of selection in terms of my day-to-day work and how those skills apply in a. And then the other cool thing I like is when you're practicing law, you're often in front of courts and judges and maybe appellate judges if you get that high. What I'm working with are citizen groups and politics. I'm a political junkie. I love the give and take of a deal. So I get to work with different decision makers. So that's another aspect that you wouldn't typically get from a legal career, is that you're in the courts and you're sort of at the end of the process rather than building the document and working collaboratively with various stakeholders. You're basically at the end where things have fallen apart, right? So I think that's one of the other truly enjoyable things that I like about doing the job. Is there any are there any questions that you guys might have in terms of how things might be in a non-traditional legal environment?
I was just wondering, so your company is a consulting firm essentially?
Yes.
Okay, and your legal background is what helped you to kind of develop it?
That helped, and also the fact that I understand all the statutes, so even though I'm not going to be telling my client, hey, this case says this, and it changes the law this way, and this way, I'll be able to understand it, and so when the county counsel's giving him advice, and maybe she might miss one thing, I'll be able to say, I'm going to defer to you, Andrea. However, did you remember that one footnote on that one page? So I think it helps benefit the client, but I don't hold myself as an attorney, mostly for business reasons. Because if I start doing it, attorneys are not going to refer me to be their consultant, right? So I need to keep that dual business approach where we're business partners. And I don't have insurance, and I don't want to have to pay if someone disagrees with my decision. Yeah.
So you don't have to go to law school to do the work that you do?
Correct.
Right. So what kind of career path would you, I guess, advise for, I guess? Like, I'm a business student, I'm minoring in law, so like, just, I don't know. Does that make sense? Like, what would I have to do to do what you do?
I think take some environmental resource courses helps, but I think the main thing for anyone, no matter what field, is writing. The one thing that because we've hired people that have great resumes that actually work for mining companies, and they actually bring in their own clients, and you think, oh, this person's going to be great. And then when it comes to writing a document that's much simpler than the documents they just can't put pen to paper. They can't analytically think things through. They can't organize their thoughts. They can't write clearly. So I think the main advice for anyone, no matter what field you do, unless it's super technical mathematical field where you don't have to write, is any sort of consulting thing would be writing. Writing, and then if you're done with that, do more writing. So I think, and not only that, that also helps you articulate things. If you're a good writer, it also, a lot of times you're good at public speaking as well.
What did you get your undergrad in?
I got in political science at UC Santa Barbara, international relations emphasis. And it took me 7 quarters to get through 5 quarters of Spanish, but you had to do 5 quarters. But I was more interested in getting into government, and then I realized the salaries that government draws, especially as an early career. So I said, grad school, law school, I think I'll take the LSAT. I did not have the option of the GRE at the time. Yes?
Do you feel that mining companies and big energy companies have the environment's interest in mind? Or best interest in mind when they're planning a project? In other words, like, would they destroy a waterway or forest for a profit?
I think if it made sense, if they wouldn't get caught. Most of the companies I've worked with, and there's a couple of mining companies, and it's funny because a lot of times lead agencies will say, oh, don't trust Cemex or don't trust Granite Construction, they're big and they're, I have found that those are they're much more responsible in that they've built in those values into their principles. And they are able to afford, because they're big, they're able to afford to do some perhaps more costly mitigation in terms of noise attenuation, emission reductions, that I found the bigger companies to be more responsible environmentally than the smaller ones. Smaller ones, it's Jimmy Joe, they got this land from their dad, they used to farm it, but lo and behold, there's minerals there, but they're not highly educated, they need to make a lot of times they're still good people, but they're making shortcuts to make things operate. So my experience has been, and I've never really seen anyone that basically has tried to hide any adverse impacts, but I find the bigger companies are actually a little bit more sophisticated and more conscious about that. Yes?
I mean, company-wise, how often would you say your firm works with, private enterprises rather than, public?
Yeah.
My parents are civil engineers.
Yeah.
They own like a private enterprise. So when you get these professional opinions. In the last few presentations we've talked about having professional opinions, and it's really just anyone who has an opinion about anything.
Yeah.
From what I've learned in the last 2 classes, but.
Yeah, so
do you take state? I know the state hires.
Yeah.
They have their own surveying companies and stuff. But would you prefer private enterprises or state-funded companies
That's
The
a
state
really
has
good
their own
question. Yeah,
kind of agenda.
And they have their
for private
requirements.
enterprises.
and for the most part, they're going to pay your bills, right?
Exactly.
But they're also going to take way too long to pay your bills. So it's sort of a balance. Like a couple of years ago, this was not a mining project, but the Empire State Historic Park up in Nevada County, they actually were doing a remediation project where they were cleaning it up. And what my company did, we did a programmatic EIR, it's an environmental impact report, but because they have 13 different areas that they're doing different cleanup activities, and they've got 9 different types of cleanup activities they're doing, we did what's called a programmatic EIR, which says, okay, if you use this type of cleanup activity in this area, here are the mitigation measures and measures that would apply. Great, super interesting, fun project, but during that time, California ran out of money. So we basically were left holding the bag for 9 months, and half of our office was working on that. So, but in terms of, but eventually we got paid. But we, like our worst clients have been those small shoestring guys that they need our help to sort of navigate them, but they ran out of money or they didn't like the result, even though we did everything we could. The decision maker said, you know what, no. So it's hard to really say there's pros and cons. We actually like working for small, well-funded private companies because they're creative, they have money, they can think outside the box, they're nimble. So some of my, one of my favorite clients is a farming company down in Fresno where they didn't know anything about mining. They were the biggest peach farmer in the United States, even bigger than any place in Georgia. And they were super sophisticated, smart, but they didn't know anything about mining. So they said, we want to get this up and running, we want to beat our competitors. Here's a whole bunch of money, solve all our problems, take me out to expensive dinners with wine. And I was able to do that. It was cool. And it was really creative. And they paid us to give them the best documents. And our documents, actually, there was a company that came a couple years later that was geographically close. They stole our document and they basically used it. So I think, for the most part, those highly funded, nimble private sector companies are probably my favorite. And then one other question I thought you might have been getting to in terms of licensing. Environmental consulting and doing the California Environmental Quality Act doesn't require a license. Okay. However, with the reclamation plans, the technical documents, if you're doing slope stability or hydrology, you actually have to have a licensed stand. And the state's actually moving that. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Either that or a hydrogeology license or stamp. So you have to have some sort of particular expertise for certain types of those documents, and it's kind of moving that way because you have the State Mines and Geology Board is very license centric, so they're moving that way. I don't think this is jumping.
Yeah. In terms of consulting itself, I know you said you had some previous experience in environmental law and all that, but it seems like consulting in general is just such a broad industry, I guess you could say, and everybody and their mother can start up a consulting firm if they want. But what type of experience would you recommend, I guess, getting, in any field? What would you consider experiencing before you consider, not only starting, but, trying to work for a consulting firm in terms of education or practical experience itself?
As I said, just, make sure that English is a focus, writing is key. I think if you know what sort of area you want to consult in, like if you want to do hydrology, taking some undergrad hydro classes, right? If it's geology, taking some. So focusing on the subject matter that you ultimately want to get into. But really, the best thing is to try to get in somewhere, and just by showing that you have the initiative and that you're a good writer and you're a good communicator. I know, like with us, we are always looking for a hire. It doesn't matter whether or not, we're always looking for good people. And if we can find good people, we'll find something for them to do. Even if in slower economies. Some of our better economic years have been in slower economies because, like right now, our editor used to work for a big environmental consulting firm that they laid her off when it slowed down. I'm so happy that she got laid off. She's smart. We actually started off pretty low, but now she's actually starting and drafting first drafts of these very complicated documents. She does aesthetic evaluations. One of the things with mining is it's not always pretty, as you probably know. So if you're on a hillside and you're mining in this, you're going to have some adverse impacts. And what she's done working with our graphics guy, she does aesthetic evaluations where she does what it would look like, what it looks like now, and what it looks like in the future. Well, she was like just a grunt little editor, but now we've sort of been able to teach her and take, because she's that can-do attitude, right? That hard-working attitude. So I think writing and just initiative.
With what you were just saying, there's a book being passed around. Is that some of her work in there?
She edited it. Yeah, so and then she may have done the land use, like in the EIR, she may have done the land use section, and with the reclamation plan, she is getting really good at taking first drafts, because both in California Environmental Quality Act and SMERA, there's a lot of boilerplate language, like a lot of the regulatory background information. So she's been able to take a lot of that and at least get it started by using some templates from similar projects, and then we can kind of help her sort of refine things. But yeah, she's in Scotland right now, but she's basically our go-to person in getting things started.
I noticed in a lot of those books, there's like a lot of maps and stuff. Like, and it looks like you guys are using the GIS or Geographic Information System.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a separate person working
Yes.
with that?
Yeah, his name's Mark. Cool guy. He actually went to UC Davis and got a landscaping degree. But he was doing GIS while he was in school, and so afterwards he still hasn't got his landscaping license, but he kept on doing GIS stuff. So he was working for some firm down in Sacramento, and we were able to woo him away with our charm and our big bucks, and so. But yeah, and they also do computer-assisted drafting, which is CAD, which is more of a scientific engineering type graphics, but we're moving more and more to GIS because all the state and federal agencies are using it, and it's very adaptable. So yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, we have ours, and at one point when we were really feeling it, we actually had two guys. We're down to one. He's probably more productive than those two guys were, so we're kind of actually happy about that. Yes.
I'm noticing this looks a lot like other EIRs that I've read. Are they pretty much like the format? Or
Yes.
Like this less than significant?
Exactly right. So a lot of the format, the statute and the regulations basically say, here's how you're going to do that, right? And then it's our job to make it look nicer. It's with our graphics. We take great pride in our graphics. And then one of the documents that I sent with you was called a final EIR, which basically, once the draft EIR is circulated, that draft EIR is actually the final document. It's just called a draft EIR because it's basically telling the public, this is what we think. Beat us up and tell us why we're wrong. Then we prepare that document to explain to them either, hey, you were right actually. We've revised this section to do that, or thanks, but no, you're wrong, and here's why. So that's what's called a final EIR.
So there's something going down here in town where they decided not to submit a final EIR. Do you know why that would be?
Probably because they know that they're going to get denied, and once you submit that final EIR, it goes before the decision maker. So they're probably going back and going, well, we really, not only can we can't fix this with changing this one edit, we have to go back and do another study. Okay. So that's probably what's happening there. Or they ran out of money. Yeah.
Do you only do mining projects, or do you do all sorts of?
Like 90% of my clients are either agencies or mining companies. We found that they're sort of interesting and fun and different, and even though there are a lot of the same sort of issues, each site's its own. You have the same weird neighbors here, like funky neighbors here. So there's going to be differences, but we are so good at what we do. Agencies like Alameda County, I pretty much live there because he's got 8 different mines and it's just one guy. So I'm basically me and half my staff are just adjunct staff. So we're plenty busy. If we have the opportunity to bring other people and do other things, if you have a special skill and that you can help, we'd love to go beyond that. But we only have 9 people in our office. And so, but like that one state project's a historic mine, but it was a remediation project. So and there was one EIR that I didn't bring, is a road improvement project. But this is sort of boring. I don't get yelled at those here. Yeah.
Have you ever dealt with like a subsea mining thing with all the resurgence in that?
I haven't.
No.
Offshore mining.
No. There was one project down in Southern California that was a potential use, but most of those are state lands leased projects where they're pretty specialized, and I haven't been able to get into those. I think we have like almost an hour left, yeah.
No,
Yes.
it's okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
So you said that you don't formally, officially practice law, but you have legal training that you use in your job, and you stay licensed. You are a licensed attorney right now, including paying the fee, doing the continuing education. So why the second part? What would be bad if you didn't do that? Do you get can you have a higher rate, or does your partner have it?
My other partner's the same way. So, a couple of things. I think it does substantiate a higher billing rate, in that if he and I have that law degree and we're practicing attorneys, even though we don't practice law, I think either a county or a private entity is going to say, you know what, they are worth $235 an hour. Because attorneys are $400 or $500 an hour. So it does substantiate. The other thing, Matt, is that by doing these continuing education, we're constantly keeping up to the changes in regulations. So I went to this in San Francisco, poor me. I had to go to a conference for 2 days, so my family came out at the end of the conference, so I was able to stay through the weekend with them, but still do all this education, still staying up to speed with the current events. A lot of wetlands, a lot of Endangered Species Act, California Environmental Quality Act.
So follow up, second question. So in the traditional law firm situation, the top folks are called partners. I think you might have used the word partner, but officially you're called a principal. Is that right?
Yes.
So and you have 9 employees.
Yeah.
So is there like a pathway to vice presidency, or what?
So at our firm, I think it's going to be different at any company. So my partner Dave and I, we're principals. That means we own the company. So that's sort of either the top or the bottom, because essentially we're slaves to our employees and our clients, right? So that's the highest level, and we charge the most. And then we actually just brought another guy the guy that I was telling you about, McGeorge, he's actually a principal. We brought him, and he now owns the part of the company too. So those are the 3 principals. Then we have project directors, which we have 2 of those right now. One that's really good, one I want to be good, and he's got the potential to be good. So then we have 2 project directors, and then below them are project managers. So the project managers are the sort of the day-to-day people that are doing these documents. And the one lady, the editor, she's now an associate, an environmental associate, but she's super close to being a project manager. And I think we're going to try her out on like a smaller project where she can just manage it herself. And then we have a graphics person, and we have a document production person. Our document production person is the 6'1" tall German lady, and she keeps everyone in shape, make sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing. And so she's sort of the office manager. She helps us with invoicing, she helps us with collectibles, and she does all the document formatting stuff too. And she probably does the work of 3. And she did the work of 4 until she had twins, but now she's back. Now she's just doing the work of 3. And then we have a graphics person, I think I had mentioned earlier.
So you don't have to tell us details, but with a law firm, if you're an associate at whatever level, you're paid some kind of a salary. There can be bonuses or whatever.
Yeah.
But at the partner level, you basically get what's left over, which ideally and most of the time is more than you would make. So is that the same kind of financial format, or do you guys all share these?
We're an S corporation. So based on the percentage of our ownership, whenever we take distributions, they have to be relative to that specific ownership. So I'm second in command, my senior guy, so he gets the most.
Percentage, it's a percentage thing.
Yeah. Then we also can bonus ourselves out based on merit and billable. And so because we're a consulting firm, we don't get paid, and our employees don't get paid unless we get money in. So the people that are making a lot of money and being most productive, we like to share that. So, and same with a law firm where they'll give bonuses out based on billable hours. We do it similar. Most of it's billable hours, but we also, like for example, my 6'1" German lady, she doesn't bill a whole bunch of hours because she's too busy helping us with all this other stuff so we can be productive. So we give her bonuses and benefits, other benefits like flexible time, working from home until her sitter gets there. But it's similar to law, but we have more flexibility because it's our business, right? So we get to decide. And the other thing, the one project director that it can get better, we're also super flexible. So we have 2 guys that love cycling, and one of the guys is my problem child. But so he cycles all the time, and which is fine. as long as you're getting your work done, right? So we're all flexible about that. I like to go to the gym, so I might come in late 2 days a week, come in at 10 because I wanted to do an X-Bike class in the morning. But, so we're trying to be flexible with our employees, but the main thing is, this is our coda. Clients, business, personal. So if you take care of your clients, that'll take care of the business. If you take care of the business, we'll take care of you. And then the last thing is, and we also encourage professional development too. So like they'll continue education courses and stuff like that. So that's sort of our philosophy.
You got one right here.
Okay, yes.
Has the drought in California, I know that obviously it's been raining a lot more this year than the last, but did that have any major effects as far as like job opportunities for people wanting to mine? Did that put any regulations as far as, air pollution because of how dried out the soil was and things like that?
I think what that did, there are a couple of aspects of the drought. One was water supply, which is always a part of your CEQA analysis, became much more strict in that there was some water supplies legislation in terms of how groundwater is monitored. For decades and centuries, it was basically a local issue. But with the drought, the state stepped in, the State Water Resources Board stepped in and said, you're actually going to do some sustainability plans to make sure all these, so you're not basically pumping them and using all for ag. You need to, so that actually slowed down, not necessarily mining, but development was that process. But in terms of the drought and how dry it got, in the Livermore area that I've been doing a lot of work on, there's all kinds of dust that there never was over the years. And so we had a whole bunch of dust meetings, and everyone's blaming this mining company and that mining company, and this development and that development. So it didn't stop things, but it certainly made things more complicated. So I've got some goodies for you guys, and I'll just leave them up here. So I've got some brochures, there's some about how we service industry, how we service lead agencies. So those are not as much fun. You're probably not excited about that. But we have some cool pens. I love these pens. I've got like 80 of these. So I'm going to leave some of these here for you guys. And then some coasters. Yeah, with our logo. So whenever you put down, say, that's a cool consulting company. Oh, it's this one. Let me put my beer down here. So there's some coasters. And then I know that these are not adaptable to the iPhone 7s, but we have some headphones that if you don't have.
There's an adapter you can have.
So here's some goodies for you guys to get later. But I thought part of our job is not only doing a good job, but also getting our name out there, going to different consulting companies. One of the firms or the industries that we're involved in is the California Mining Association. So we're always going to those, giving all these people's goodies if they come by our booth. I do a lot of public speaking, do a lot of talks. I have a talk next month actually for a planning association about how you deal with environmental impacts on agriculture. And because ag's basically the way California sustains itself. So, and it actually sustains most of America and the world. So here's some treats for you guys. I think Matt will probably make you wait until the end of the day to get to it.
So Bruce, thanks for coming all the way from Sacramento in the rain. I know you're going on vacation tomorrow.